Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, I decided to do one final video that takes a look at the possible time that R. Kelly could get if he's found guilty in any of the cases against him. Just to recap, you all may know R. Kelly is currently indicted in four different jurisdictions. There is the Illinois state case. In that jurisdiction, he's being indicted. There's also the Illinois federal case. He's being indicted in that jurisdiction. And he's also being indicted in the state of New York in the federal courtroom. And he's also being indicted in Minnesota, right? So I decided to make one final video because of some comments that one particular commenter posted on my channel. And when he posted that, it kind of dawned on me that most people don't really understand the stakes in R. Kelly's case. And I decided to make this video because I think it would be helpful to help people understand what the stakes are, right? So I'm going to basically go back and look at that one particular commenter, and you can see what he posted, and I'll get into more details as to why I made this video. I think the other thing is many people aren't really thinking about the stakes in this case. Many people aren't thinking about the actual stakes. Now, honestly, this video is not about R. Kelly being innocent. It's not about R. Kelly being guilty, right? It's simply about the stakes. Now, with that said, I'm letting you know up front, I'm definitely not a lawyer. I haven't gone to law school. I'm not licensed to practice law. I haven't taken the bar exam. I'm really just some guy on the internet who's kind of like piecing all this stuff together. So if you've come to this channel and you think that you're talking to a lawyer, I'm letting you know right up front, you're not. So the commenter on my channel that I'm referring to goes by the name of Debosky Gun. And basically, he goes on to comment that he believes that R. Kelly will receive anywhere on the low level of 3 to 5 years from the state. It may be 5 years from the feds, and then he goes on to say that maximum it could be 7 or 8 years, no double digits. I'm here to tell you that nothing can be further from the truth. At least that's what I believe. I believe that most people can, when it comes down to the R. Kelly case and when it comes down to the stakes, I think most people can be put into two categories, right? Or three categories, if you will. Those that understand the stakes, and most of those people are going to be professionals because they have probably seen cases like this before. We're not on this magnitude, but they've seen a fair amount of cases and they know how the system works, so on and so forth. And then I think there are those that understands that R. Kelly could be in danger, but they don't understand how deep the danger is or how treacherous the situation is. And no disrespect to Debunski Gun, I think he's in that category. He understands obviously that there is a risk of jail time for R. Kelly, and like many of us, uh, we understand that there's risk of jail time, but we have absolutely no idea how much jail time there could potentially be. And then I think the third category are people who aren't even really thinking about the stakes. They don't necessarily understand it because they're not thinking about it. They're totally oblivious to it. So this video is really for people in category 2 and 3. For those that believes that he if he loses he'll get some time, but it won't be that much time, right? And then for the third category of people who aren't really thinking about the actual stakes, right? So I think that again, I've already expressed my opinions on some of the charges in this case. I think the new charges are bogus. I've said that already. You can watch the first video that I did in this series, and I think that any intelligent person in R. Kelly's situation would want to know the stakes. And for all of us that are interested in the R. Kelly trial, we too should know the stakes so that we can be properly advised. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so I mean, I actually can't give advice, legal advice, but we can have some sense of what the stakes are when we, talk to other people about this case, and when we watch this case play out in the media and eventually in the courtroom. So first off, let me just explain that I got the statutes that are involved in this case from the indictment. And again, if you want to see the legal analysis that I did for the indictment and the Illinois federal case, you can check that out on my channel. I think I did a deep analysis and a quick analysis, but for the most part, we're looking at several statutes. All of them are Title 18. Uh, Basically, we're looking at 371, 2251A, 2252A A2, 2252A B1, and 2422B, right? So those are the statutes that we're looking at. And what I want you to take quick notice of is that there's several counts in this case, right? I think there's a total of 11 counts, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see how many there are, right? So if I just scroll down to the bottom, yeah, so there's a total of 11 counts in this case. So essentially what happens is that some of the statutes are counted multiple times, right? So for example, count 1 involves 2251A, and then count 2 involves 2251A, and then count 3 involves the same statute, right? So I took that, or I understand that to mean that basically he can receive multiple convictions for that one statute, right? So I just wanted to give you a sense of how I came up with this information, just in case you're wondering how I came up with some of this information. I thought I kind of explained it ahead of time. So I wanted to take a systematic approach when it came down to looking at the time that R. Kelly could potentially get. And I created a spreadsheet, and I'm just gonna, before we get into it, I'm going to explain how this spreadsheet is set up. So there's the statute, there's a description of the statute, then there's the minimum sentencing, and there's a maximum sentencing, and there's a multiplier. Now the multiplier is based on the counts in the indictment, right? Some of the statutes are in several different counts, and I take that to understand that he can receive X amount of time per violation of the statute, right? So because of that, we have X times the minimum sentencing and X times the maximum sentencing, right? So let's just go ahead and get into it. So Title 18, Section 371, conspiracy to commit offense or to defraud the United States, which carries a minimum sentence of 0 years and a maximum sentence of 5 years. And from reading the indictment, I found that there was only one count in that in that potential violation. And basically 1 times 0 is 0, and 1 times 5 is 5. So he can receive anywhere from 0 to 5 years for that violation. Section 2251, selling or buying of children, that carries a minimum sentence of 30 years, a maximum sentence of life, right? And from reading the indictment, I found that that violation appears at least 5 times, which means there's a maximum of 150 years or 5 life sentences. Section 2252A(2), certain activities relating to material constituting or containing child pornography, minimum sentence of 5 years, maximum sentence of 20 years. There's 3 counts in the indictment, which means there is a minimum sentence of 15 years, a maximum sentence of 60 years. Section 2422B, coercing and enticement. And basically, this is for minors under the age of 18. And basically, that violation carries a minimum of 0 years, maximum of 10 years. That violation appears 5 times in the indictment, which basically means there is a minimum sentence of 0 years, a maximum sentence of 50 years. Now, basically, from what I did is that I totaled up the numbers of years that he could potentially receive, and I came up with 165 years, right? And that's the minimum, right? If he was to be convicted of all charges in the federal indictment in Illinois, and the judge gave him the minimum sentence, it would come out to 165 years. If he was indicted and convicted of all charges in Illinois, this number comes out a little funny, but basically the maximum sentence that he could potentially receive is 115 years plus 5 life sentences. So the reason this number looks funny is because when you look at the statute, for example, 2251A, you'll see that basically the punishment is not less than 30 years or for life, right? So, from my understanding, I took a look at Black's Law Dictionary, and I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but there is no number that, or at least I wasn't able to find a number that's associated with life. So basically, I couldn't add life with the amount of years, where there are some violations that basically mention a specific amount of years. It's hard to there's no way to actually add life onto that, right? Unless you want to say the average person lives about 99 years or so. Maybe I can do that, right? As you've seen, some of the statutes actually give a specific number of years or maximum number of years a person can receive, and then one particular statute, basically selling or buying of children, mentions life sentences. If you wanted to convert life sentences to years, we would just say 100. I would just say 100. There are some people that can live 100 years old. So then, well, that sentence would potentially be 615 years, right? Now, I don't believe that he could potentially get 615 years. He may not even get 165 years. He may not be convicted on all of these accounts or any of these accounts, right? So this is, of course, a hypothetical, but I wanted to give everyone a possible view of what he could potentially receive if he was convicted of all of these accounts. Now, the other thing you need to keep in mind, this is just one case. This is the federal case in Illinois. There's still the state case in Illinois. There's still the federal case in New York. And then there's also the case in Minnesota, right? So, all things considered, if he's convicted of all the charges in all the cases, we're looking at some double digit numbers. And we're definitely looking at some pretty crazy numbers. So I think my guesstimation of him receiving time based off of Larry Nassar's sentencing wasn't that far off, right? And again, I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm not saying he's innocent, but I'm saying what I'm actually saying is that if he is found guilty, the potential amount of time that he would receive could be crazy. We're looking at some really, really crazy numbers here. And I think that most people don't understand what the prosecution is trying to do. The prosecution is trying to set him up for some crazy numbers. So leave your questions, comments below. Let me know what you think. Do you think my calculations were off? Are you a professional and you do this for a living and you can explain it to us in a better way? Please do so. Leave your questions and comments below. Let me know what you think.